Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, as the case may be, where you are. This one's been in the making. So you're aware of Louis Theroux's documentary on his very narrow and limited view on what the manosphere is, what that means for us, and what we're supposed to apparently do to fight it, I guess. And I've taken several notes. I did watch the whole thing. It took me about 4-ish hours to watch it because I had to keep pausing to think about what the heck was going on. There were some subtleties that I noticed that perhaps other people might not have, but here's my unpacking of it. I think that it would have been a lot better if he was honest about what's happening and that he didn't cherry pick interviews. And it made the whole thing look like a ham fisted strike on stereotypes, like whack a mole. There wasn't a focus on the issues that men are facing that makes them go toward content that is in the manosphere or red pill circles. Because you're not just going to watch something that makes you feel uncomfortable. Most of the time we watch stuff that we agree with. Most of the time we watch stuff that's entertaining to us. Well, self-improvement, going to the gym, anything that elicits a sense of urgency within you to change, it's not always comfortable. And the manosphere and the red pill, kid gloves don't exist in there. And if they do, it's the people that are trying to sell you something. They're trying to exploit your sense of lack, or they're trying to pick something that is a strong issue, and they and only they have the cure for it. Like, get your girl back in 9 days. How can you guarantee that you get the lady back in 9 days, right? And it doesn't take into account that, oh well, she's not gonna have a choice. She's gonna be so attracted to you, right? But just stuff like that, or oh, here's the key to understanding women. There's 3 simple tricks. As long as you do these, join my listserv. Well, they don't call them listservs anymore, but subscribe to this, and for the low price of $19.03, they always make it some obscure amount. That absolutely it just doesn't make any sense. It's always some weird amount. It's another way of looking at it. Somebody's like, oh yeah, my program costs this. Right. Okay, let's see some testimonials that you didn't write yourself. Moving on. So there are issues, and the way Louis goes after it, it's not balanced. I don't think he claims to have a balanced look on it, but if he claims to have a balanced look on it, he has failed miserably. Didn't even come close to balanced. Much like the search results that I mentioned in another video. I searched red pill on Google, and let's just say only one hit on, I think I went through 4 or 5 pages of Google's hits on this search, and only one had a balanced and fair look at it. So there was critique, and there was a little bit of understanding why, but not praise. Not saying, hey, they are doing good things. Not that I expect it, but that was just one fair outlook. The others were much like Louis Theroux's take on everything, actually worse than Louis Theroux's take on it, is most of the hits on Google. And this is just for red pill. I didn't search manosphere, but red pill definitely had, that was Google, and it was unbalanced, just totally one-sided. So is it any wonder why this documentary was... So, it's just like in 2019, 2020, we were really going down our individual rabbit holes. The Tiger King, I mean, it wasn't just the Tiger King. People were really trying to. It was an interesting time, and you had a much larger spike in people who talk to each other on certain platforms to eliminate stress. That's putting it very lightly. So, young men are often rudderless, and the two of them that are included in the documentary, I view them as being rudderless. I mean, hyper successful to some people's viewpoints, sure, but I think rudderless. They don't know how to navigate life in general. So that's a big issue that he doesn't seem to make an honest attempt to understand. Uh, it seems like he's just blaming men for wanting to become better than a serf or an ATM to an ungrateful lady. And I'm not saying that every relationship is going to drive a man into becoming that, but it's so prevalent that it's not talked about. And usually when something's prevalent, it's talked about. This is one of the few exceptions of things that are so prevalent and nobody's talking about it. A lot of men are thinking these things, and a lot of men that deny that they're thinking these things, they still think these things. They really do. And until we admit this, we're not going to move forward as a society. We're not going to move forward at all. And you're going to see men continue to check out. So a lot of men that are married and have been divorced, a lot of times they can't even see their kids. They're basically, even in the marriage, they were ATMs with rings on their fingers. And during the marriage, sometimes they can't even see their kids because they're working 60-plus hour work weeks, and money's getting spent that they don't know about. And then he gets home, and if he tries to relax or wind down or just de-stress in any way, he's met with complaints on why he doesn't do things around the house or smile all the time while he's met with a honey-do list. So, and I'm not saying feel sorry for men, this, that, the other. I mean, men got themselves into those positions as well. I'm not going to deny that. So, no, Thoreau did not pick men in his documentary who are relatable even, because the ones he picked are seemingly highly successful, at least in a monetary sense. They drive expensive cars, they're always going to these lavish parties. I mean, think of a corporate exec. I mean, corporate execs don't necessarily do that either. Unless you're doing some sort of avenue and you're really, really good at it, you're not going to spend a whole lot of time socializing with co-eds. You're going to be figuring out what your next move is strategically within a business that you've created or a business that you've been appointed an executive of. And there you go. You're busy all the time. So it just kind of seems strange to me that he picked the ones that he picked. Well, it doesn't seem strange to me, but I predicted as much, that he would pick certain people and he would just have every appearance of being justified in his critiques. So the bulk of Manospherians or red pillars in the community are they're people just like me. They don't buy into all of these extreme views as you hear about. We disagree a lot. It's just like any other thing in life. You've got somebody who prefers a backhand. You've got somebody who prefers a different stance when they're playing ping pong. You've got people who are light with the touch. You've got people who are heavy with the touch. You've got grapplers, you've got boxers, you've got fencers. Okay, everybody's got a different opinion on things. And they might not necessarily be 100% wrong or 100% right. Okay, look at the scientific community. Case in point, we thrive on challenging each other's ideas. And no ideas were challenged in this documentary except for one. Right? That's a huge problem in our society, and this documentary just exacerbates that problem. So his interviews consisted of viral shock jocks with trendy and divisive views. Very few interviews mentioned or focused on the positive effects of the manosphere or red pill on men, but rather most interviewees defended their clout like cornered religious apologists. Oh, yes, so this is another thing. They have a lot of online clout, so in order to not lose any of their following, they need to keep their persona going. And to me, this is where I lost some respect for people that I perhaps had respect for in the past within the manosphere, and I'll go into that later. So just continuing on my notes here. But yeah, they were more concerned about defending clout than giving honest answers. And even if they were giving honest answers, they played right into Thoreau's hands. It's like I was appalled by the level of ineptitude from these guys. I wouldn't have agreed to answer certain questions. Granted, certain questions probably would never have come up with me because I don't operate how they do. But continuing on. So some failed miserably to defend any points, while others flat out admitted they were using people and didn't care because they didn't have to. Oh, that was HS's interview. Now, they were honest. I will give them that. But in my opinion, even when they were honest about the questions, even the hardball questions that Louis Theroux asked, they didn't really do a good job to represent the red pill at all, in my honest opinion. They represented their corner of the red pill. They represented, not the red pill as a whole. And maybe, I don't know what Louis Theroux told them before he questioned them. Like, he might have said, hey, this is me just wanting to get to know you. He might have said, oh, this is about the red pill in general. And they should have thought about that when he started asking these questions and not allowed them to get into their feelings, which, in my honest opinion, they did. And that doesn't help the cause anymore, if there is a cause, it didn't help it any. Because it just justifies things in Thoreau's mind that, oh, well, they claim that you should always be in control of your emotions, and that's a women's thing, and a man's always control of his emotions. And then he gets them with these gotcha questions, and then they fold because even though they don't outwardly appear to be emotional, oh yeah, their emotions are going haywire, and they decided the next words that came out of their mouth. And most of that was pride and ego. And I get it. If you're hyper successful, why not let other people know about it? I get it. But to the point of a community's image as a whole being evaluated based off of what you say doesn't help things. And I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed in HS. I'm disappointed in Myron Gaines. And I'll go over the reasons why soon. I'm just going off of the notes as I wrote them as I watched the documentary. So his first interviewee with HS. I'd already forgotten what HS stands for. I never really followed his content, and in my honest opinion, I'm better for not. I'm not saying that everything he says doesn't have its place. I'm not saying everything he says is wrong. I don't know, because I don't follow the guy. All I have to go on is this documentary, and yes, while I do admit this documentary was a hit piece, I'm also not a complete fool when it comes to people and reading them. And HS, the interview on first impressions from the interview, it went exactly as I expected. Louis Theroux actually did make a fair comparison between him and Bonnie Blue. I don't. That's going to be an unpopular opinion of mine, due to the fact that men and women are very different. What is going to appear as very judgmental towards a woman, the things that are going to appear very judgmental towards a man, HS fits it to a T. So the comparison between him and Bonnie Blue, she's the one that slept with 1,000 guys in a certain amount of time. I don't follow Bonnie Blue either, but the comparison that he made between HS and her was fair in my honest opinion. So the best part of Louis' documentary was his interview with HS and his continued banter with HS throughout the documentary. He kind of puts snippets of HS throughout the documentary, and I think that was the best part of his documentary with what he was trying to push, because HS just played right into his hands, and said the things that Louis Theroux was hoping he would say, to a letter to the T. Which, his accusation that kids are being influenced by HS, or everything he says, I don't think that's a fair play. I mean, sure, there was more than what should have been said regarding the opinion on him being a role model, but whose fault is it if the kids are learning things from men that were questioned in this documentary? Honestly. I mean, if kids are watching this stuff, who should be aware of that? I don't know, maybe the parents? Isn't that a wild idea? Raising your damn kids? Sorry, I shouldn't have said damn, but this is what makes me the angriest in almost any issue that comes up, when somebody says, why don't you think of the children? Right, why don't you think of your children? It just gets me fired up. It's like you want to excuse every bit of your own accountability, and at the same time you're going to say, oh, well, my kids are exposed to this, my kids have to deal with this. Why? They're kids. How much control do they really have over their lives? How much agency? They pretty much have agency of how they move their body and what words they speak, how they're introduced to consequences, how they're introduced to the realities involving success and failure, how they're introduced to manners, etiquette, and protocol, how they're introduced to morality, how they're introduced to all these things is on the parents. Or at least it should be. And if they don't learn it from the parents, they're going to learn it from somewhere. And in this case, we want to blame them for learning it from these content creators. I will never get over the level of disregard for raising your own children. And that is another problem. Sorry. So, going on is he pretty much switches from HS when they have their banter about what he does and how he makes his money. They didn't really go into that. HS kind of answered questions, and then Louis Theroux went to other people, and then he kind of did some research and then reapproached people. Like, he approached them twice, once to get an initial interview, and then once after he kind of did some digging on answers that he got. All right, so another guy he interviews is named Justin Waller. I have at least heard of Justin Waller, and I've seen him make appearances on platforms that I did follow in the past. And I don't think that's a fair comparison to the Manosphere Red Pill as a whole either, because when you interview people like Justin Waller or Myron Gaines, there are certain consequences that are going to come with their lifestyle that are not going to be relatable to us. Okay? You're not going to be dating you're just not going to have these yacht parties and all these other things unless you are on their level, whatever level that is. Okay? And when you are moving things the way they move them, it comes with a different set of consequences that we just everyday folk don't really think about, right? You're only seeing what they choose to show you, basically. So going back to HS, sure, he can host parties with influencers, but can he split wood? Can he start a fire? Can he hunt? Can he slip a punch or escape a side choke? Can he teach another man to positively lead and influence in a community? You know, and once again, you know, this is not something that young men and boys, I mean, they're seeking this out because they feel like they lack something, or they're told by society that they're bad. They're told by society that they shouldn't think this way. They should repress their natural urges, their natural instincts. They should suppress everything that's masculine. And then when they see somebody like that who isn't judging them in certain ways and saying that they're wrong or they're bad or they're doing microaggressions, they're giving into their preconceived cognitive biases, they're giving into all this other stuff. The only reprieve that they have are with people like that. And honestly, they are popular. At the end of the day, they are popular, and they have the financial success that gives them the time to spend a lot of time in front of the camera, to go out and talk to people. They're basically self-made socialites. If we really want to get down to it, they're self-made socialites. And of course, you're going to have your words said as a socialite, and they're going to be captured and put everywhere, like sometimes taken out of context to further a certain end. And such is the life of a socialite. But at the same time, people just don't seem to have the common sense in saying, okay, well, what else does this guy do? Right? Now, to be fair on Justin Waller's part, he was involved in U.S. Steel or metals or something like that, right? So he actually did kind of work his way up. I guess you could make the same argument with Myron, but they were hyper successful to the point where they could cut ties completely, or at least in my honest opinion, it appears like they can cut ties completely with the trades they were using to build themselves up, to the point where now they are socialites, which is why I say they're self-made socialites. So of course, these men are going to have more pull on the internet with what kids see than people like me, you know, which is why you need to like, comment, and subscribe on these guys that are saying things that are relatable, right? And they're not like these, but I mean, easier said than done. You know, people are celebrities, people are high-level influencers for their own reasons, okay? And I'm not saying that, you know, you should stop watching them. I'm just saying take what anybody says ever with a grain of salt, because they're not you, you're not them. You face a different set of choices and a different set of consequences for not making the right ones than I do, than Myron Gaines does, than HS does, than Justin Waller does, okay, than Louis Theroux does. All right, we all face a different set of circumstances, different set of choices, and the choices that they make aren't going to be the same whether they work out or not as Justin Waller, which is why you need to just take what they say with a grain of salt. Don't follow them blindly, because then you're just another acolyte for another religion, a fringe religion. I'll agree, but it just makes you look like an acolyte and an apologist. So right, so it should be the dad's job first and foremost to spoon feed knowledge and wisdom to a young man. It should be the dad that does that, right? And if it's not the dad, you know, you've got your coaches, your teachers, male mentors, strong performing friends. Like, you know, that's a big one. Picking your friends well. You know, Like maybe it's a kid that knows how to do a rap tackle better than anybody else. Or maybe it's a kid that he's really good at his jump shots and never misses. Or at least he appears like he never misses, okay? You know, those kind of relationships are important. Or maybe it's a guy that just gets good grades. He passes everything, and when you want to discuss a homework assignment, he's like, oh yeah, that's done. I already did that. You're like, whoa, what do you mean? People like that are good to know, right? So if you're not getting it from dad, you're not getting it from your friends or your male role models or your teachers or your coaches because you don't have one. Maybe you should start an activity. Like, I get it, sports cost money, but I mean, a hobby doesn't, right? Well, you get the idea. A hobby's not going to cost you as much as playing a organized sport, usually, unless your hobby's like golf or equestrian. All right, I digress. So, if you're not learning from any of those people, and you have access to a smartphone or a tablet, you're going to learn it somewhere. Because if you think that your life should be something, or you know that how your life is not comfortable, you're going to seek out lifestyles or an example of that seems appealing to you, and you're going to run towards it. That's what young men and boys do. We are ambitious by default, at least to some degree. You don't want to be a bum. You don't. I mean, some guys out there definitely challenge that narrative. And we all have that person pictured in our heads. But by and large, men do not want to be unsuccessful, and they want to be somebody. And so if they see somebody that is looked up to, no matter how immoral or amoral or detached from reality that we all deal with, it seems that they're pushing a good message, a positive message, or at least towards the male mindset on its base level. And it appeals to these young men. I mean, I'm not trying to make it sound like hey, men, you need to do better and step up in the kids in your life. Yeah, I understand it's not always that simple. You know, like, divorce and that kind of thing, you don't even have custody, all right? But something's got to give, right? And that's what this documentary should have discussed is you know, what can we do to come together? Not, oh, well, these men bad and any man who follows bad, you know, instead of, well, what drove them to them in the first place? So, moving on, right, so the mentors, the dad, the coaches, all that, right? So that's where it starts. Now, having an adult conversation with a child can be dangerous because they're simply not equipped to deal with the responsibilities of an adult. And a lot of these male content creators assume that you have at least the potential for mental maturity and you have the age of accountability to where if you're able to try the most extreme of their views, they're pretty much blameless from it, and it's going to be your fault, right? Now, a child, and this is where I will agree with Louis Theroux to an extent, a child does not have that, okay? So, of course, you shouldn't make your content readily digestible to where you're basically handing a child a stick of dynamite that's lit and saying, okay, just walk out there a little ways and then throw it as hard as you can. Not a good idea. You're not going to get a child, let's say even if they're physically large enough, you're not going to sit that child on a Hayabusa and say, take it around the block. Not if you care about your Hayabusa. That went dark. No, so you're not going to get your kid on a crotch rocket and say, hey, go have fun. It's irresponsible, right? Now, not monitoring content or telling a kid specifically to watch these influencers, it might not be actual dynamite. It might not actually be sitting them on a crotch rocket and say, hey, go to town. But it is just as dangerous in other ways to expose children to that. Because they're not ready for it. They're not ready for it. But whose fault is it if they're getting there? You know, you can't shirk your responsibilities as a parent. And if you do, or if you're thinking that you're not going to have to be responsible for these things, don't be a parent. Don't, without a condom. I'm telling you. Jeez. You just can't get me any more fired. You want to get me fired up, start mentioning kids and how all of us are to blame for what happens to kids. No, we're not. Parents is mostly at fault here. So, if you don't want the responsibility, don't have kids. Because then you're just going to foist them on society and people like me with an actual conscience that hate to see that. And you're going to send these kids out here without basic coping skills or confidence to try to be adults when the time comes because you failed them. You know, that's why my channel exists. So actually, I should be thanking lousy parents. You know what? Continue to be sucky parents, because it's going to be people like Uncle John, the cool uncle that rides a Harley. They're gonna be giving them good life advice, okay? And they're gonna teach them, hey, no, Uncle Johnny didn't do that. You did it. Now you gotta face the responsibility for what you did. And but I should be thanking lousy parents. You're just making my job easier. In my honest opinion, from the manosphere's point of view, if you want to call one of these interviewees doing the best, Justin Waller probably did the best. HS did the best for Louis Theroux, but for the community of the manosphere and the red pill, Justin Waller probably did the best. But unfortunately, even he still appeared to be an apologist, and he pulls up in a Lamborghini and says, oh, it's not about the car, screw this car, you know. Whatever. Who do you think you fooled with that, Justin? Really? If it wasn't about the car, what was stopping you from coming up on a Segway? What was stopping you from coming out on a, what do they call them? Bird scooters? Like you just use the app and then you just use this scooter, and those things can move. Anyway, you get the idea. He could have pulled up in anything. He could have bought a beater. Like he could have bought a Datsun truck. Cash money. And then chose to drive that up to the interview. But no, he goes with the being unrelatable, being hyper successful. He's got an image to uphold. So it's like, a real alpha like Justin Waller wouldn't have ever appeared up in anything. If you're that damn alpha, what does it matter what you drive? That's my question. Now, I'm not challenging Justin Waller. I'm not saying that you're not alpha or you're not this or you're not that. I'm just saying how it could possibly make you look, okay? And if I'm that darn alpha, I'm not going to care about what, you know, I'm not going to care. Like, I'm driving a Datsun, so what? Now watch me split wood with one arm at my size. So, it's not about the car. It's not about the car, but you had to pull up in that car. Right. He just has to hold a certain image. And that's where the apologetics started. Simple introduction. And the apologetics are already starting. Not a good start. At least not from a debate standpoint. Not a good start. And after he'd answered the initial questions and had that initial interview with Louis Theroux, I think both of them responded to each other well, like even gotcha questions. Justin Waller hit him with a couple of questions of his own. It was pretty decent debate, I think. Now, to me, it went south when he agreed, okay, yeah, you can go ahead and talk to my wife and, see the kids and see the house and everything, see where we live and what we do. I think that's where it kind of went south, because the questions that he was asking to her responses seemed rehearsed and scripted, which is what I expected that, because Waller probably sat her to the side and said, "Hey, I know he's probably going to want to interview you too. Are you are you able to do that? Okay, here's what I want you to say when he does this. Here's what I want you to say when he says this. Here's how I want you to act when he brings these topics up, and don't engage in these topics, or don't engage here, or say, well, I defer to Justin on that one, or whatever." And she did that to the letter, to the T. And in my honest opinion, she did a really good job of not showing any emotional reaction to certain questions that Louis Theroux asked her. And even if she felt some type of way about the questions or the thought seeds that were planted there, she did not seem to be reactionary towards them at all. So either, just take that how you will. I don't see it. It could have gone better, and I think that didn't really help Justin's case any when the wife was interviewed. And I can't remember her name. Like, he introduces her and everything in the documentary. But I could have predicted that happening. So they appeared scripted in nature. It didn't really provide any semblance of balance in this hit piece, CROCK-umentary, as I'm going to call it. But yeah, like, he didn't even get off to a great start with that Lamborghini. So it was, I think the interview with Justin Waller, it was more about Justin Waller's Justin Waller. Sorry, Justin. That was completely unintentional. I did not mean to say that you are a wallower. Okay. I was trying to say follower and Justin Waller at the same freaking time. Okay, so it seemed to be more about his following than the Red Pill or the Manosphere as a whole. I can't lose my followers. I can't lose my self-image. I have to come up with reasons that preserves that. Manosphere or Red Pill be damned. I said the D word again. But forget the Manosphere, forget the Red Pill. It's my hide. And I do understand that to some degree. You should always protect yourself first, but there's got to have been a way that he could have done both. Are you telling me you can be that successful and you're not going to be able to think of a way that you can do both? And if you can't think of a way that can do both, and you're in a compromising position from being in this interview, you could always turn the interview down and say, hey, I don't want to talk to you. Whatever. Who cares? And my honest opinion, several people who were interviewed should have called it off and shouldn't have even gone into the interview. And I'm going to get into that soon. So as far as Justin's overall performance with Louis Theroux, I guess he played it well. As far as playing the game that he plays in real life with real houses and real money, he did as good as he could have done. Now, for the Manosphere and representing the Manosphere or the Red Pill, I don't think he did, but that's my honest opinion. So then we're going on to Myron Gaines here. And so more than half the time, Louis Theroux actually looked like he tried to understand the motives of each person he interviewed. His questions were very soft at first, in my opinion. And then he seemed to really reel in the toughness on the women that were a part of Myron Gaines' interview. He was really tough on them. Wasn't necessarily tough on Myron, but he was tough on the women. And Myron allowed this, okay? So I think Myron allowed this because he wanted to give off the appearance of, I am experienced in debate, and it doesn't matter what I concede to, he's not going to be able to get one up on me. I guess I could commend Myron's courage for that. But was it practical? I think no, and I've got reasons for that. So first of all, when he started questioning Myron's girlfriend, Louis Theroux's reading of women's emotions, I think he's spot on with reading their emotions and sensing when they're uncomfortable. Now, I'm not saying Myron doesn't. I'm just saying Myron didn't seem to care, which doesn't exactly paint the manosphere or red pill in a positive light right there either. Okay? But Louis Theroux's reading of his girlfriend's emotions, Myron's girlfriend's emotions, I think was spot on. So, I think also that he took more liberty than he should have as a guest of these people. Like when he was first going to HS's interview, he made a mention to whoever was opening the door for him, butler, security, whatever you want to call him. It seemed like a multi-role liaison between him and HS, right? So when Louis Theroux pulled up to HS's property, HS had a locked gate. A security guy came up, and HS was right behind the security guy or whatever, unlocking the gate. And Louis Theroux made a quip like, "We're real journalists, not YouTubers," or something to that effect. Now, if I was HS, I would have immediately doubled down and said, if that's the way this interview is going to go, this interview is now over. Good day. I would not concede to any of that, okay? Because already, right there, he's giving a stance. And for HS not to even challenge it, really? Do you have a spine? I mean, I know he has a backbone because of the weights he lifts. But do you have a spine? Do you have testicular fortitude? Why are you just going to let somebody talk to you like that? Or talk to your crew like that? There are certain things that I will tolerate somebody saying to my face, but if you say it about somebody else or somebody I care about, like, hey, whoa, 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 whoa. That person's not here, number one. And number two, it's not true. Now, if that's how you're going to talk about the people that I associate with, and that's how you're going to talk with people who I care about, that's how you're going to talk about them, I don't want to talk about anything with you at all. We're done. We're done. You go about your business. Move along. But no, he didn't even challenge it. It's like, what do you mean a real journalist? Let's define a real journalist, or start the debate right there. Define a real journalist, and then see if you actually can concede a point. And then after you do concede the point, if he is right, okay, you're not a journalist, but a YouTuber does have similar things to a journalist. You could at least agree there and then say, okay, now moving on, now that I've conceded I'm not an actual journalist, but I do have influence, now that we've conceded that, if you're going to continue to posture yourself this way, the interview's going to be over the minute you cross that threshold again. But he didn't even challenge it. So any respect I might have had for HS, which I really don't have any. I mean, and that's just my honest opinion. And you can flame me if you want. I just don't have any respect for the guy. All right? So, any respect I may have had for him, I lost at that moment. Because he should have shut down the interview after insulting him and his crew. Now, more to Myron Gaines here. Myron lost a lot of my respect when he didn't end the interview either. Now, it wasn't right from the start. Now, Louis Theroux was actually kind of respectful to Myron at first. But during the show, and I can't remember who the guests were on the show, but Louis Theroux was one of those guests too. He was sitting in the sound area, and he took the liberty, which he shouldn't have done. If you're a guest and you haven't been introduced to certain parts of the house, or if you are told whose room is what, and then you just want to go poking around, that's poor etiquette. And in my honest opinion, that's grounds for someone to say, hey, I don't want them in my house. I mean, give them a second chance if you want to, but, hey, you are doing something you're not supposed to. I don't like it. You got to go. All right, there's certain protocol that as a guest you should know. You should know better. And Louis Theroux knew better. He knew better. And he walks into an area where there's a young lady, and he just starts asking her questions. Maybe like, oh, I can get her to answer. Myron's not going to answer, or Myron's only going to answer this way. I'm gonna question this girl. I'm gonna get the dirt on Myron. It was very underhanded. And in some ways, he did that with Myron's girlfriend while Myron was right there with her, right? And he would just go after the lady. It was very, very, very cowardly. It's like he's conceding points. And this is one of those subtleties I mentioned during the first part of my book report or oral report on this CROCK-umentary, okay? So it was, as much as Louis Theroux says he wants to protect women and he wants to, he wants to acknowledge women as being just as capable as men. Okay, well, why did he go harder on women? Why did he zero in on the women that are surrounding these men and try to make his points that way? Why? Because he knew he could. He knew he could. And that's why he did it. He knew he'd at least get a little snippet, uncensored, away from Myron, and with that girl, if he could just sneak in there. And sneak in there he did. And what did Myron do? He didn't end the interview right then and there, which is what he should have done. I mean, just allowing the level of disrespect. I just don't. Not any respect. I still have some base level of respect for Myron. Like, I would actually talk to him face to face. Same thing with Waller. I would have a discussion with them. I would not with HS just because I don't like the guy. I just don't like him. Now, Myron and Waller, I might not like them in some aspects, but I can still respect them on a certain level. Okay. Do I agree with everything they do? Absolutely effing not. All right, but I do have some sort of base level respect with them because I know that they would show me the same respect. HS just doesn't have the air of being able to respect anybody unless you're already coming with a certain angle. He's not going to look at a man and say, okay, well, I need to have common decency here. No, you don't. You're not at this level already? Okay, well then forget you. Or you're not this type of person already? Okay, well forget you. Myron and Justin don't strike me as people that would do that. Which is why I would be open to talking with them, and which is why I'm not going to just throw a lot of shade on them. But Myron, you lost some of my respect, buddy, when you decided that you weren't going to end it. I mean, I just don't get how somebody, especially if you know they're up to no good, and then the minute they do no good, you don't kick them out. There's just a lot of subtleties with this documentary that he was able to pull off. And Louis Theroux, if that's what you were trying to do, job well done. You did it well. And people are going to watch it, and people probably are going to have more to say about this. But then again, we're going to have more to say about it too, and by we, I mean people who actually represent the Red Pill and Manosphere and what it actually is. And in my honest opinion, the Manosphere documentary and Red Pill documentary, well, this isn't Red Pill, but it's the same thing more or less. It's the same community. The two are often close-knit in just about every endeavor. But it's not about what he's saying it's about. And the premise he's trying to push, it doesn't accurately represent anything the Red Pill or Manosphere represents. Regardless of what you think or feel. It's not the case. Just talk to people like me. Talk to people like the people that didn't make the interviews, that didn't make the documentary. Aaron Clary. No freaking mention of him. Okay? Rollo Tomasi appeared for a few seconds in like a clip. And who else? Levi Nix, just most recently. Kevin Samuels, rest his soul, was never mentioned. How could you not mention Kevin Samuels? And then another one, Tom Likas. Tom Likas is way more outspoken on these issues and men's issues. Way more outspoken. And he's also more outspoken to the behavior of women, specifically. So if anybody should be anti-femaleism, I mean, the first person that pops into my head is Tom Likas. But I mean, he's on another level of untouchable, and that's I would have to explain that for a couple of days before it started to make sense. But he's very much elite, but he's earned it. So this CROCK-umentary, he knew he could get somewhere with the women, so he used these underhanded tactics. Myron didn't call him on it. Myron didn't say, hey, the interview's over. And neither HS or Myron gave him a warning even. Like, hey, if you do this again, you're out. I didn't appreciate that. And I wonder if Louis Theroux would have even apologized. I think he would have. Like, I'm sorry, you're right, that was underhanded. Okay. How can we go from here? But that didn't happen. They didn't even challenge him. They didn't even tell him, hey, that was disrespectful. Or even question it. Why did you do that? They might have questioned it after the fact, but hey, too late. Shoulda, coulda, woulda at that point. He appeared to focus more time on the men who had an abusive background and really shined a spotlight on it. So, was it relevant that they had abuse in their past? Okay, maybe. But so are a whole host of other men that were not interviewed. Regular men that adjust and move on and don't project their abuse on other people. You can adjust. Like to say, oh, well, since Dad died at the age of 46 because he'd have a handle and a half of Jack every day, that means you're going to be an alcoholic. Really? Or, oh, well, your father was a murderer and now he's on death row. That means you're just a ticking time bomb. It's only a matter of time before you smack somebody's head open with a stick. Really? I mean, do you have more of a likelihood to have that kind of future ahead of you? Well, sure, it's a risk factor, but dang. It doesn't write history for you. You still have a choice on how you treat people. So, and in my honest opinion, if I had to guess of who would be, out of all these people, who would even be borderline abusive, Waller's not the first one on my list. And he does have he admitted to having an abusive past, right? Justin Waller did. So, I mean, I also grew up in an abusive environment. But it'll be darned if I ever project that onto somebody else. And I mean, even if I come close to it, I would feel really guilty. And I would probably apologize to that person. Like, hey, I should not have done that. That was wrong. I probably won't even mention that it had been done to me in the past. I'll just apologize for it. Because it was wrong. So, I think Louis Theroux lacks the stones to allow anyone level-headed or the ones who are actually affecting positive change in the lives of others, namely young men or boys, right? He didn't interview those people to be... They didn't even make the cut in the CROCK-umentary. We know because the ones who were interviewed actually came forward. So, the overall claim that he seems to preach throughout this documentary is that it preaches, right? The Red Pill and the Manosphere are not a church, okay? And there are several documents in any pursuit, whether that be professional, academic, even leisure, okay? Any type of reading. There's a document that explains seemingly everything you'll need to know about a subject, and they call it the Bible of. Okay? That doesn't mean you have a religion. That doesn't mean it's a religion. Okay? But there's a lot of stuff in the Bible. You want to do a murder mystery, there's one in the Bible. You want to see fantasy, there's like fantasy stuff in the Bible. You want to see a story about betrayal, that's in the Bible. Unfaithfulness within a romantic relationship, that's in the Bible. Conquering nations, rawr, that's in the Bible. Okay, there's a lot of stuff in the Bible, right? So that's why people make references to the Bible when they're talking about other topics, like, oh, you should read this book. It's the Bible of fencing, or it's the Bible of chess. It's the Bible of smartphones. You get the idea, right? And there's only one book that I know of, and it's called the DJ Bible. And I think a lot of guys should probably read that if they're lacking a sense of confidence, self-worth, and seem to have no success with women whatsoever. Read the DJ Bible. But other than that, that's the only thing that you can really point to in the Manosphere or Red Pill and be like, see? Religion! It's not a religion. Okay? So he says they preach a flawed alpha ideology. False. False, false, false. I mean, alpha's a word. I mean, it's something that we use to describe something. Mainly biology. And usually in other species. The overall obsession with the word alpha and being alpha outside of the animal kingdom really... It didn't really become a thing until, I'd say, fairly recently. Now, most of the time we'd mention pecking order. That's what we mentioned before alpha and stuff. Like, I'm higher up on the food chain than you, right? But those were the comparisons we made with the animal kingdom. All this obsession with letters. It's like, oh, well, I can't be a beta because beta's bad. So what else could I be? Oh, yeah, I'm a sigma. And, okay, all right, fine. You're a sigma. Cool. Got a medal for you. Here's your sigma medal now. Stupid. Yeah, preaching a flawed alpha ideology. I don't know anybody who does that. And if somebody does that, it's probably some yahoo that I'm not going to follow. It's probably HS that says that. And even he probably doesn't say that. And speaking of HS, he also mentioned that, this is funny because, like with the abusive parent, okay, well, one common topic in the Manosphere is about single mothers that are raising their children. And you would think that if a single mother's raising her child with how the mainstream talks about it, they'd be like high achievers and this and that and the other, right? So this single mother actually did try to do HS the best she could, okay? So she was working 6 days a week, 2 jobs, so that HS could go to private school, okay? That's got to be tough, right? And as much as I say, being a single mother is hard on kids, I mean, she tried. You can't say she didn't try. Not with a track record like that, okay? So she's working 6 days a week, 2 jobs, so he could go to private school. Now, no mention of his father at all, okay? So it does kind of make me wonder, okay, why? Why there? Would it have been too toxic to have him around? Was his dad no attempt was made to find things out about Dad. Or did she make moves to try to keep Dad out of HS's life? That could also be. We didn't get into that, right? Now, if this was really a fair and balanced questioning, that would have been a question that came up. Never comes up, okay? So there's more irony there. So since HS was raised by a single mother, you'd think he'd be a real man, right? He'd be a real man, sensitive to women's needs and all this other stuff, right? Because toxic dad wasn't around to corrupt his mind, right? So even if anybody makes that argument, it's not a prevailing one, because this documentary shines light on the whole picture, and HS would probably be considered the epitome of everything that makes up a toxic man. So it's just about painting the manosphere a red pill that has some sinister agenda, and that it ignores serving men's real issues, which it doesn't. I mean, he's just going the other way with it. But there's no attempt to find out the men's issues that actually are ignored, dismissed, or ridiculed by society. He also mentions intellectually dishonest claims such as the 2024 election was a, quote, testosterone podcast election, unquote. That's absolutely ridiculous, and since he decided he was going to get political, here we go, I'm going to get political. So for the past 10, 20 years, whenever, we've had home improvement, the king of queens, not exactly the paragon of masculine virtues, right? Those men in those relationships should have left those ladies, should have left them. And, or at least laid down the law and said, hey, look, this is what you're saying, this is how you've been treating me, but this is how it is. And if you don't like it, bye. Right? But then we wouldn't have had season after season after season of those shows. I mean, it would have just been not good television. So there you go. But television is not real life, okay? And people, I don't know, I shouldn't have to say that. But you're going to put commercials out there that make men look like they're incapable of tying their shoes unless a woman is right there with them saying, uh-huh, now what do we do next? Oh, good. It's like men can't even so much as do the simplest things unless a woman's there to help him. And it's just, it's quite ridiculous. And also, not just incapable, but also being bad, being evil, being toxic, being this, being that. And the messages even crossed into political circles. Oh, well, you think this, that means you're this and 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 this. I exaggerated a lot, okay? But it probably wouldn't take me a lot of great effort to find an example of there actually being that many thises based off of one fact that they have about another person. And it's become so ridiculous that anytime a man hears a voice that's saying the opposite, or saying, you know what, all this stuff you're hearing is not true, a man's mind is going to snap on. He's going to switch on. Light bulbs turning on. He's like, what? Excuse me, what? You're saying I'm not that. You're saying my masculinity is something I should be proud of, even. You're saying it can do good for society. That it's good that we're this way. Okay, all of a sudden he's hyper-focused on this person speaking. He's like, okay, what else is this person saying? You know what? He's got this, and he's got this, and he's got that. I want this, that, and that. Maybe I should be more like him. And there you go. There you go. The one person that's not telling them they're bad, browbeating them. The one person that's telling them, you don't have to take this disrespect from people. The one person that's saying, it's sad that people keep self-deleting themselves over issues that can be corrected. Something's got to be done, and I'm the one that's doing it. Look at this. You know, you can be this. You can be that. You can do better. and guys to grab onto it with both hands because it gives them hope for something. And it doesn't matter who's saying the message, unfortunately. But it's the one message that's not telling them that they're bad. It's the one message that's telling them there's hope for you. And what are they going to do? Right? So if one political party is going to push that message, which they have been, okay, you can't deny that there's been a slant there. Are you really going to be that surprised when there's a pushback in society? Are you really going to be that surprised that there's a pushback in politics? Is it really so surprising? Honestly. You know, you go to a pound or an animal shelter. You're the one person that's going to go there to pet that dog. That dog's going to beg you to take him home. Or her, case depending. One of the reasons why I don't like going to those places, because it's like, dang, I want to take all these animals home with me. You can only help so many, right? That's how the manosphere and the red pill look to me. That's how it looks to me. You might not have a physical men's shelter, but to me, you have a but a metaphorical men's shelter. And that's communities. Regular mainstream communities. There's these men that just don't know what they can honestly do because nobody's telling them what they can do. They're telling them what they should do and not what they should do because it's best for them, but because it's best for a narrative that's being pushed. And men are done with it. They're finally realizing, hey, it doesn't have to be this way. I'm going to challenge things. I'm going to use my brain here. And then when somebody comes to visit, like yours truly, they're like, wow, that's inspiring. You're welcome. Then you got people like HS, Justin Waller, Myron Gaines, a retired kickboxer that wasn't in the documentary. Now, they had snippets of him, but I'm sure that Louis Theroux would have loved to get an interview with that man. He probably even asked, but he didn't even mention that he'd asked, but he probably did. And that man probably said no, okay, for good reason. For good reason. I don't think that interview would have gone well at all. And you know, he might not have had to interview anybody else for this documentary to have the same effect that it did. So, is it really surprising that there's going to be some pushback when you keep piling crap on a specific gender? For sometimes for reasons that, you know, didn't even involve them. Really? You're surprised there's going to be a pushback. But that doesn't mean that it was some weird red meat, testosterone-infused election. It's just absolutely stupid to say something like that. So, I mean, if you accuse people of imagined intolerance, it's only a matter of time before they become intolerant of you. And I can't remember where I heard that, but I wish I could say that I'd made that up. But once again, if you accuse people of imagined intolerance, it's only going to be a matter of time before they become intolerant of you. And that's exactly what happened. That's exactly what happened with Democrats. That's exactly what happened with Republicans. And that's why we saw that shift. And some women are even getting sick of it because the Democratic women just went straight after any woman who could have dared have an opinion of her own that didn't have the approval and green checkmark of the sisterhood uber alles, which would be, oh, you only did that because you aren't aware of your internalized misogyny and you're such a prisoner. I thought women were strong and independent and could do whatever the hell they wanted to do. Shouldn't have said hell. But you get the dang idea. Come on now. Come on. Is it any wonder? You can't just smack a dog over and over and over and expect it not to bite you. It's stupid. And yet we can't call these people stupid? Get out of here. You're stupid. I'm sorry. You're stupid if you completely discount the possibility that it might have had something to do with what you did and not any of these influencers. Because at the end of the day, they're not the ones that are going to the polling booth. They're not casting their votes for these guys or these women that have internalized misogyny. That's what you sound like. You sound worse than that, in fact. If you want proof, just switch on TikTok and yeesh. Sounds worse than what I did. I could not hope to make fun of or mock certain people to the level that they are complaining about stuff. I think another one that just didn't do the Manosphere or Red Pill in this documentary any service whatsoever was Sneeko. The best thing Thoreau could have hoped for in making it look like nothing less than evil. I mean, if HS was the best thing, then Sneeko's a close second. Now, to be fair, I've never liked Sneeko. Being completely honest, I thought he was a wannabe tool. I still kind of think that way. Now, he might come back and say, oh, well, easy for you to say. How many followers do you have? How much money do you have? Okay, fine. I'm not a sniveling brat despite all that. I said what I said. But he's not exactly mentioned in the Manosphere or Red Pill community in a positive light. Did you even poll any Manosphere circles or Red Pill circles? I mean, out of all the things he could have done, he could have polled. He could have polled, P-O-L-L-E-D. He could have polled Facebook groups, at the very least. He could have polled groups that were supposedly comprised of these hyper-masculine, alpha male, macho jerks, right? He could have polled us and said, what do you think about this guy? You'd be surprised about the results that you get. Especially if you went to a place called SOSPA. You'd be really surprised about the results you get back from certain people. And Sneeko, he's not praised nonstop. Now, there are a lot of people that think he's the greatest thing since sliced bread, but you're going to get that when you're more of a socialite than anything else. And honestly, he was so out there that he got canceled on several platforms, just like another person you might have heard about that got canceled on several platforms. Okay? So when it comes to the Manosphere being painted as evil, Sneeko's kind of an easy scapegoat to heap that dung on, right? Now, would I treat the guy with respect? Maybe, if he was respectful to me from jump, but I doubt he would be. I think he's in the same category of HS. You're only going to be respected by him if you're one of his followers or acolytes that say he's great, and you're just going to blow sunshine and rainbows up where the sun doesn't shine. He'll probably like you and just instantly respect you. But like, if you're just going to want to have, I don't know. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. So that's what I think about it. And I think Louis Theroux is a lout for painting the picture around him to make it seem like he's a revered authority figure in the Manosphere and that he's widely respected by the Sphere and the Red Pill community. I mean, that's painting a bullseye around where your arrow impacted. And be like, I won! And that's exactly what this documentary is. So all he seemed to do for the most part of Sneeko's appearance in the documentary was allow Sneeko to talk. And when he did that, you know, he'd ask him pointed questions, and then he'd just allow Sneeko to just rant and rant and rant. You know, that's one of the philosophies in the art of war. Never interrupt your opponent while he's doing something stupid. I can't remember the exact... I paraphrased it. It's been a while since I cracked that book. But never interrupt your opponent while he's making a mistake. I think that's it. While he's making a mistake, let him do it. Don't even don't capitalize on it. Don't even move in after that first mistake. Don't even move in, because they might make another mistake, or another one, or another one.
So he was just letting Sneeko talk, and Sneeko was saying that conspiracy this, conspiracy that, the Jewish this, the Jewish that. So I found that interesting that someone posing or appearing to be on the left would all of a sudden have an interest in defending Jewish people. Not exactly the narrative du jour friendly of him. So that made me suspicious. It also made me think, in my own conspiratorial brain, maybe Sneeko was put up to this. Maybe he was in on it to get himself back into the spotlight and had an agreement with Thoreau. And if he did make a deal with Thoreau, that's not exactly brag-worthy either. And Thoreau, I think, was played just as much as Sneeko was played, but I think Sneeko played Thoreau more than Thoreau played Sneeko. And that's not brag-worthy either. So it's a documentary with fools on either end. And there's hidden humor in that too. But only Justin Waller, and I will commend him for this, Justin Waller is the only one that was not clipped or caught saying anything even remotely hateful towards a group, or that could be construed as that, right? Because he didn't say, all these Jewish people. He didn't say that, right? But he didn't get caught saying anything that could be considered anti-Semitic, right? This CROCK-umentary only exacerbates the irrational and dangerous belief that people who disagree with you, or if they're in the manosphere, if they're in the red pill, or they perhaps lean more right than extreme left, they are a follower of Thin Mustache Man, a Yahtzee, or a Nazi. Okay? It's a tired argument. We're done hearing that. It's like, if you are calling us that and you have no idea who they actually were, you should just stop. I mean, it's dangerous, because when you cherry pick people to interview who say these things, even if out of context, it only serves to exacerbate any divisiveness or divisiveness we currently experience. I mean, Louis Theroux's a twat, I think, and I hope I get the chance to say so to his face. His closing remarks on the manosphere are the cringeworthiest of all. He says it's all gain hacks and conspiracy theories. He's dead wrong, full stop. I mean, yes, it's no secret that a lot of the manosphere and the red pill is about improving your own life first. I mean, if you're fat and you sweat and you stink just from walking from one end of the store to the other, you should probably do something about that. You're going to get more success with the ladies if you get into the gym, get in shape, okay? That's not a gain hack. Now, there are some men in the manosphere and the red pill who say, okay, well, if you can't do lateral raises with anything more than a 35-pound dumbbell, you're a B word, okay? I get how that can be a little much, okay? But that doesn't mean that the manosphere is full of people that are going to be on that level of fitness, and they're going to demand that you be on the same level of fitness. No, you don't need to bench press 230 to get her to like you. You don't have to look like Arnold freaking Schwarzenegger or Lou freaking Ferrigno to be able to ask a lady out. Get out of here. Nobody thinks that in the manosphere or the red pill. Nobody thinks that. Now, for him to say that, it's just so intellectually dishonest and stupid. Now, conspiracy theories, yes, there are a lot of content creators that are in the red pill circles that really dive deep into that stuff. Me, I say go where the evidence leads, and a lot of people will say that's hypocritical because the evidence obviously goes to these conspiracies. No, it doesn't. Now, sometimes, yes, sometimes there's a lot of truth to them, all right, and I will say that. But I'm not going to entertain every single conspiracy theory and, run with it. And yes, there was a lot of that in the 2016 circles. But now it seems to be more of a voice of reason. People want the truth. which I think is good. But then you've got people like Sneeko and Myron, and they go out there with that. But it's not gain hacks and conspiracy theories. There's a lot of practical stuff to it. How to gain confidence, how to look people in the eye, give a firm handshake, get in shape, right? Don't dress like a slob, Don't work on your skills. Work on education if you want to. Get a better job, right? Improve your life. Do something you like, And if you're not good with the ladies, get some hobbies. Get some guy friends. Hang out. Live life. Don't wait for somebody's permission to live life. You're more approachable, and you're less likely to be treated with disgust. If you're living a good life that you enjoy, you're going to be more pleasant to be around. And that's only going to help you with the ladies. That's the manosphere. That's the red pill. I mean, there's also another part of the red pill which calls out all the untruths that are constantly preached to us, like, oh, you just ask her out, you have a family, you have kids, happy ever after. Doesn't happen, okay? But there's a lot of lies that men are told. That, just be yourself, just do this, just do that. While just be yourself isn't necessarily a lie, it's bad advice, okay? So there's a whole bunch of stuff that we're told, oh, this is good, this is how you be a man, that's what a real man does. And the red pill smashes through that and says that's all lies, okay? And that's other videos, that's other topics, because guess what? I would be considered, I guess, a part of the manosphere and part of the red pill. Even though I'm not going to endorse either idea, it's just I'm in the space by virtue of what I say and how I speak. So I understand that. I'll own up to it and any consequences that may come from saying that. But I'm not a defender or an apologist for the red pill. I'm not an apologist for the manosphere. I'm just saying this is not what the manosphere or red pill is. Never was, never will be. No matter what these viral influencers say, no matter what Louis Theroux says, we know the truth. He, even if he does know the truth, he doesn't want to paint the picture of the truth because it's not going to be fitting to his narrative or his stirring the pot, which is what this is. So, the manosphere hasn't taken over. He claims that it took over. Really? It took over? Well, then why do you have so many men that say, oh, well, the red pill and the manosphere, they're just cringe. They're just all about being a toxic man and they don't care about women. They say the same thing a lot of women say, okay? If it's really taken over, then women would really be chomping at the bit. She would be looking for a red pill man. She'd be looking for a man in the manosphere because they're the real men, dang it. It hasn't taken over. If it took over, you'd be hearing about stuff like that. And then you'd see guys flocking to the manosphere and flocking to the red pill. You'd see men flocking to it. And even though it might seem like they're flocking to it, they're not. Like most guys think, like if I broach this topic with a lot of guys, they're instantly going to put me in this basket that says, oh, you're one of those. Oh, man. What happened to you? Who hurt you? And it hasn't taken over, because if it took over, I could talk with any man on the street, any woman on the street about the red pill, and they'd be like, oh, good, go you. I'd have better looks with saying, I voted for so-and-so. And then they'd be like, yeah, right? I'd be more likely to get that than I would be to get positive things said about me. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm part of the red pill. Oh yeah, I'm part of the manosphere. I have a podcast. It wouldn't go over. That'd be socially stupid of me to do that, at least at this point, right? So it is not taken over. And it doesn't have anybody trapped in it either. I mean, its sole existence is based on a man's desire to want to live a life of liberty and happiness. And it's not new by a long shot either. A lot of people think, oh, this is a new wave. This is a new... No, it's not. I mean, it's been around since when I was in high school, okay? And that was 1999. And it's probably been around longer than that, even. So I'd be willing to bet anyone that it won't take over. So if you're saying, oh, the manosphere is going to take over, we're in danger of that, I'll bet you. I'll bet you. It's not going to. You know, too many people have problems with uncomfortable truths, and it's been that way since the dawn of time. Okay? Only now we have an increase in rapid sharing of information over the internet. So it's not hard to put two and two together as why you're seeing more of it. Because it's easier to talk about it. Easier to bring it up. Easier to bring it up without real social consequences either. So if it's just my avatar or just a head and a picture with a name attached to it on the internet that says, I believe this, I'm not getting personally attacked. My avatar is. So there's really no risk in me talking and sharing about these things. You think I'm really Uncle Johnny? I could be. But no, I'm seriously. I mean, it's been that way since the dawn of time. People have problems with uncomfortable truth. And speaking of religion, you know, that's in the Bible too, you know, about being uncomfortable when you're faced with the truth. So, in the closing montage, you're going to see that HS got arrested, and unlike the claims of the logically fallacious and stupid hit piece, he wasn't arrested because he was in the red pill or in the manosphere because he was toxic. You get arrested for a common denominator. He was stupid, and he broke the law. That's why he got arrested. Has nothing to do with the manosphere. If he wasn't a red pillar, manospherian, if he wasn't a content creator, he made a decision and he did stupid things that had nothing to do with any of that. If you play stupid games, you win a stupid prize, and he was no exception to that rule. Alright? He got arrested due to his own dumb decision. Alright? And if he doesn't agree with me on that and was like, oh, you call me stupid. Okay, well, what you did smart? Okay, then. You got arrested. You got what's coming to you. And then, it's also mentioned that Myron's lady broke up with him. And if you watch the segment where he's being questioned by Louis Theroux and then she's getting hit with the questions, that doesn't surprise me either. She was very uncomfortable during that interview. So, you know, she probably hadn't thought about things the way that somebody else would perhaps think about them. And she was only thinking about it the way Myron was spoon-feeding her information. Okay? And I'm not going to make a judgment call on Myron for that. Myron lives life how he wants to live it. And, you know, I might not have respected him as much for not standing his ground and kicking Theroux out of his studio. He made his own decisions, and he's fine with the consequences. You know, Myron's not a dum-dum, okay? And if you ever see this, Myron, you know, I'm not making any really unfair judgment calls on you, okay? I'm just saying, I'm not surprised his lady broke up with him. And a lot of women are uncomfortable. Like, by a lot, I mean the grand majority of them would not be cool with close-ended monogamy on one end and polygamy on the other end. They're not cool with it. Like, open on my end, closed on her end. They're not cool with that. And the only way they would ever be cool with it is, you know, if somebody really was at a certain level in their life and then they didn't even know about it. But even then, they don't want their guy doing that. Okay? So, you know, a lot of that's a deal breaker for a lot of women. And I guess she probably didn't come to terms with, you know, hey, what if this really did occur? It's likely to occur, knowing who Myron is. I want out. Okay? So, you know, I'm not surprised by that. So it's hardly brag-worthy to mention that happened with Myron and his girlfriend. Hardly brag-worthy. But, you know, that's part of his closing montage. Pfft, whatever. You know, you should take these guys' doses. The guys that were interviewed. Even the ones that are level-headed, like, you know, perhaps Myron and Justin Waller. Take them in doses. You're not going to agree with what they say, by and large. I mean, by and large, you might agree with what they say as far as manliness and getting confidence and not being a loser. Sure, that's great. But where they stand with personal relationships and how their relationships are with women, you're probably going to disagree with much of what they say. And that's fine. And they would even say that's fine. They probably wouldn't even recommend even attempting to do what they want to do, which is to have a harem of women, essentially, right? Or a miniature harem, right? They want to be King Solomon. Which, okay, if you're that ambitious, go for it. I'm not stopping you. But it's no surprise that people would look at them in a negative light and have no respect for them based off of how they posture themselves. So, and they even understand that. They're honest about it. So, the crux of it is I'm going to end this with a bit of a compliment. So, Louis Theroux ended the documentary by throwing a decent right cross to that punch machine that he tried to punch earlier and didn't do well. Now, does that mean he's just as capable of being a toxic male? Nod your head yes. Even Louis Theroux is capable of being a toxic male. So, in closing, if your ideas can't stand up to any challenges, you have weak ideas. Okay? If your ideas can't stand up to reality, you have stupid ideas. And this is me saying this. This is me composing this to my honest... I think that I'm the first person to say it this way. But if your ideas can't stand up to any challenges, you have weak ideas. If your ideas can't stand up to reality, you have stupid ideas. Alright, I'm going to go further. If you're offended by the word weak and the word stupid, you need to stop being offended by those words. Because not every idea that's conceived by you is out of brilliance. And not one thing is beyond anyone's ability to be asked a question about it. Alright? No matter how profound your ideas are, no matter how bulletproof you think your points are, they're never beyond the ability of being questioned. Okay? And it's not the curious mind that is at fault for your inability to answer the question. Okay? Trying to make everything equal will also make things more unequal. Because whatever you do on one side of the equation, the equal sign exists for a reason. Okay? And that's one of the keys. So if you're a math nerd or if you're struggling with math, think about this concept. The most important thing in any equation, it's in the word equation, is that equal sign. That's the most important part. Whatever happens over here, you got to do something over here on the other side of the equal sign. Right? So it's a constant flux. So the more you try to do over here, the more you're going to have to do over there. It's simple math, and there's a lot of truth to that in life. I'm not saying life is all about mathematics and bulletproof logic and logic rules all. I'm not one of those people, okay? But I definitely value it. And I definitely can understand that a lot of things that happen around us are predictable a lot of times. And the more you do over here, the more it's going to happen over there. And that's the simplest part of it. And this is just exacerbating what's going on one side of the equation. There's nothing else was mentioned. Just bad, terrible. So I don't think he has ideas that can stand up to a challenge. I don't think he has ideas that can stand up to reality. Okay? And I think this is a weak documentary. I think it's a stupid documentary. And it's not the curious mind that's at fault for an inability to answer a question. Okay, so he's trying to make everything equal, and he's created more inequality based off of what he's trying to do with this documentary. Even though it might not flop as far as box office statistics are concerned, it is an epic fail. And that failure to understand logic isn't the fault of logic either. So some that were interviewed also asked him about who Jimmy Savile was. And he didn't want to talk about that at all. So, yeah. Take with that as you will, but I did some digging on that Savile character, and my goodness, is he a character. You don't just get knighted by the Queen, and you have all these awards, and they're posthumously revoked. You got to be a severe F-up, or it has to be discovered that you were a severe F-up to have all these awards revoked. That's crazy. So yeah, that was an ironclad case, and for him to be friends with that person, it's quite damning on his character. And I used that word correctly without emotion. So that's yeah, it was damning of his character. Greed trumps knowledge is what wins when it comes to selling mysteries, myths, and falsehoods, and this documentary is no exception. That's it. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you for sticking around and hopefully gaining a different, unique perspective on these topics and how this interview, not how these interviews in this documentary, CROCK-umentary, allowed me to perhaps introduce viewpoints you might not have thought of on your own. Take care of yourselves and try to make a better life for you and those around you. Because that's what the red pill's about at the end of the day. Do what you can to be the best man you can be so that others around you can benefit from it. Because that's part of the reward. When you know that you're living a life that you want to live and you're able to help others, it has an impact. And that's one thing that I didn't see in the documentary that I really wanted to see, is the men that say, you don't understand how many men come up to me and say, you've changed my life. I asked a girl out. I got married, and we're doing great. I no longer have paralyzing fear when somebody says, hey, go talk to her. You like her? Go talk to her. Or at the very, at the darkest, I was ready to do it. I was ready to end everything. And your videos, your approach to life, and me being lucky enough to see it, and your message, I didn't do it. I did not end my life. I started it. That's what keeps me going. And hopefully, one day that's what's going to keep you going. Love and peace.